Here is a country of great contrast.
Great civilization of antiquity.
A foreign country a step away.
All right, we're back. It's episode number 20, number 20 for the Casa de Cavazos. Justin in Chicago, Nathan in Westaco, Texas, Ada in Harlingen, Texas, providing that Tejano connection to reality. How's it going? What's up? Keeping up with that NBA action?
I've been watching a lot of games. A lot of LeBron, a lot of Luka.
Are they showing
Nice.
the Lakers even more now, or is it the same amount of Laker love?
They were already on the schedule, but everybody's talking about it now.
Everyone's talking about how horrible that trade is now. AD might sit out the rest of the season. Kyrie is done. Clay is kind of their best player right now.
Yeah, that went south for them really quick. Not when they envisioned, I imagine.
That was a very stupid trade.
I feel like AD getting hurt is, I don't know, not unforeseen, but the Kyrie thing is huge.
I mean,
Well, I think AD going down is kind of why Kyrie got hurt, though.
More usage, more load.
Yeah, he's been playing like 38, 39 minutes.
we knew AD was going to get injured. I called him Mr. Glass in the previous pods.
You're not the
Like,
one who came up with that.
No, I'm just saying that I brought it up. I brought up the Mr. Glass name because he's known to get injured.
So like LeBron's unbreakable then.
Is he?
Yeah, he's Bruce Willis.
Yep,
Interesting.
nothing ever happens to him.
The Lakers are currently, number 2 in the standings?
Number 2 as of right now.
I mean, that being said, they're like 10 games back of first place.
Well, I guess they finally put out an article today asking if the Warriors and the Lakers runs are for real.
What do you think?
I personally don't think that the Lakers defense is sustainable. What I've noticed is that since they don't have a rim protector anymore, they've decided that they're going to pack the paint, make everybody shoot threes. And so far, their luck's been pretty good. Teams are not hitting. But in last night's game against the Knicks were hitting for a good while. And when that was happening, the Lakers looked really bad. So I'm kind of interested to see, like, once the playoffs come around, and that's the other thing that people have said, like, it's one thing to catch these teams in the regular season, especially coming off a trade. They're not ready for it. They haven't seen it. They can plan for it, but not till they actually play against Luka and LeBron. It's a little bit different. I'm kind of interested to see what's going to happen when these teams actually have time to study film, are going to play them potentially 7 times. I don't think they're going to look as good as they look right now.
Well, I feel like they might actually be a decent matchup against the Thunder, especially with their injuries down low. I mean, Hartenstein is a huge piece for them, but he's not like the biggest offensive threat for them.
I mean, they got Chet, so I don't think Hartenstein's the issue here. It's if Holmgren's healthy, that's a big mismatch in OKC's favor.
Is Holmgren playing?
Yeah, he just missed a game with a lower leg contusion, but he's been back. He's going to be ready.
Well, I've heard that people think that there's no way anyone's going to beat OKC in the West. So let's see what happens.
The Mavs did it last year.
That was last year when they had no experience. I think they're ready this year. They've made that leap. They're deep. They got 3 stars now. I mean, the Lakers would really have their work cut out for them. And watching last night's game, Austin Reeves is basically like a nobody now. This is a guy that they never wanted to let go of.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing nothing now because Luka and LeBron always have the ball. So, I mean, people are going to pick on these guys defensively. And when they're not getting the ball, sometimes their effort goes down as well.
So Reeves isn't even running the second unit.
He's had a little bit of injuries, but once Luka really started to get rolling, he's kind of just out there just to be out there. I mean, a lot of the game last night, he wasn't even in there.
A lot of it depends on LeBron's health. Even though he has that unbreakable persona, he has been showing some signs of breaking down over the past couple of years. So who knows if the usage in a playoff run would take its toll on him, especially if you're matched up against a team like Denver. A lot of these teams that you're going to be playing aren't really pushovers. Say if you stay at 2 right now, the Wolves aren't a pushover. You know, this is the team that was one of the favorites to win the West last year. They got a lot of size, a lot of intensity, a lot of great guys on the wing.
Yeah, and then the article I was reading was talking about that. There's some scouts that think it's sustainable, but others are kind of waiting to see the same thing that I said about the... And I was telling my coworker today, I was like, I don't know if they can sustain this because they're going all in on not letting anybody go inside because they know they don't have a rim protector. And like I said, that'll work if the teams are missing. But you already know in the playoffs, you're playing the best teams every night.
It's probably going to be a different story in the playoffs. The West is seeming kind of stacked at this point. Even Golden State is starting to look good with Jimmy Butler. So some of those records aren't really showing how good these teams are.
The Warriors, I think, will be a little bit more sustainable because if you watch them play, Steph is like completely reinvigorated.
Mm-hmm.
He was basically getting double teamed from half court.
Yep.
And now that he has freedom, he's putting 40s, 50s. He looks really happy. And I didn't think it was possible because Golden State's always been one of the lowest free throw shooting teams. But since they got Jimmy Butler, they're like the number one free throw shooting team.
Well, because I was telling you that sometimes Jimmy Butler himself gets like 14 free throws. He's completely fine with just throwing himself in there all the time.
What's the Warriors' record with Mr. James Butler?
When he's played, they're 10-1. Since the trade, 10-2. He missed one game.
Well, I remember we were saying on this pod that whenever Jimmy Butler went over to the Warriors, in order to make a real dent, they needed to start winning immediately, and I guess they did. Maybe they listened to the pod.
Well, he's happy too. Apparently, he was saying that this is the best organization he's ever been with.
Yeah, I don't understand why he didn't want to go there initially. It seems like they really know how to use him there.
I don't know. Maybe it's California taxes or something.
Maybe it's Gavin Newsom. He doesn't like Gavin Newsom. Pure speculation on my part.
Do you think that if LeBron listened to our pod, he would come at us for all the hate? Stephen A. is not immune, apparently.
It's only if you talk about his son, though. You can say anything you want about LeBron, but leave Bronny out of it.
Are you sure? Like, he's not a very nice guy, LeBron.
Have you met him?
I mean, you could just tell from the way he acts. Like, I've observed him quite a bit, and I don't think he's overall a good sportsman and a good guy.
Well, to be fair, like I've followed what Stephen A. has said about Bronny from the beginning, and he's always put all the blame on LeBron, that LeBron made this circus by tweeting out even before Bronny had got drafted, like just on one night, like, oh, like low key, Bronny's better than all these NBA players already. And now he shows up and he's not even close. And he continues to say, like, you're putting all this pressure on your son. And so, I mean, in that sense, I guess why it makes sense why Stephen A. responded after all, because he said he wasn't.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like everybody was asking about it. He's like, I'm not even talking about your son. I'm talking about you, that you're the one that created this circus.
I mean, it sounds like Stephen A. is correct on this. I mean, most people knew that Bronny was not that good. And most people knew that it was BS, that he was better than half the people in the league.
I mean, he's lighting it up in the G League. That's not nothing.
The G League, not the NBA, sir.
I mean, I don't know about lighting it up. He's had a few good games, and then he had another bad one. So we'll see. Still inconsistent shooter, very small. He's really going to have to make a leap to get any significant minutes in the league.
I mean, what LeBron had going for him, or what he has going for him, is his size. Like, it's insane how big he is. When you'd see him up close, like when we would sit really close at the Spurs games, like he's as big as Tim Duncan. So you have like a forward, like center kind of body that can move like a point guard. So that's really why he's so good.
Mm-hmm. He's still super strong. He figured out a mid-range jump shot.
Yeah. Well, he works out in the gym a lot. I think he also works on the strength training, so that's part of the strategy. Like, he's bulked up a lot, even compared to when he was a young rookie.
Takes care of his body. But those are things that I assume that Bronny was probably able to grow up with, having witnessed all that. But at the same time, you can't just will being massive.
Because there's also genetic components. So maybe Bronny isn't able to get as much muscle mass as LeBron, even putting in the same kind of work. I mean, but Bronny's still really young. We don't know what he'll look like in 10 years.
Well, what do you think his best case scenario is?
I think it's just what he said, and it's what I had thought. If he aims to be like a Derek White, Drew Holiday maybe would be his ceiling.
Drew Holiday's massive, like horizontally.
But also Drew Holiday, I don't think that Bronny would be that good ever.
Yeah, well, he's saying that's the type of player he would aspire to be. So I think he knows he's not going to be a superstar. But if he can be like a Drew Holiday level player, I mean, that's a solid career.
Yeah. Right now, he's got to work towards even being like in Pritchard.
Man, did you see that the other night? That Peyton Pritchard and Derek White put up 84 points combined.
The heck?
Peyton's a baller, dude.
What was funny, though, is that they had broken the Celtics record of the previous duo, which had just been done by Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum a few games before, I think.
And that team is ridiculous, but Cleveland's coming from 'em. I think Milwaukee has a ton of playoff experience, and maybe they won't show any fear when they're getting into it. I have no idea what's going on with the Knicks.
The Knicks are like 0-8 against all the top teams.
What's their problem?
I mean, they just make a lot of mistakes. Like, I think they should have won last night, but then when it came down to it, also the Lakers got a couple of lucky bounces where kind of felt like the game was in the balance. And if the Knicks had got that stop, which they did, but then like the ball somehow ricocheted off somebody's body, went back to the Lakers, and they were able to score again. So, I mean, this is kind of just bad luck last night, but I mean, sometimes that happens, and it ended up costing them because then Jalen Brunson got pretty injured in overtime. So we'll see how that plays out too. I don't think he's going to play tonight.
Yeah.
He wasn't able to even walk off the court.
His load is massive.
But tomorrow the Celtics and Lakers play, so that should be interesting.
Clearly, the Lakers are going to win. Then everyone's going to be saying that LeBron's the best, and the Lakers are going to win the championship.
They've already been saying that he should get MVP votes, but if you watch these games now that Luka's rolling, like Luka's the main guy there now. So I mean, why would you give MVP to the secondary guy?
It would make sense that Luka at age 25 or so is going to be better than LeBron.
Yeah, at the start of overtime, like Luka just like put up 5 points immediately on some very hard shots. He like crossed over Towns, spin moved into a fadeaway from the top of the key, and the next possession, like right when he switched off on his screen, just nailed like this ridiculous like 29-foot three. And LeBron's just watching, so I don't see the MVP there.
Yeah, I still think Luka looks weird in a Lakers jersey. Like visually, I'm still coping with it. I'm not like a Mavs fan or anything. It's just weird. It's like the color palette doesn't match his aura or some shit. I don't know.
Until they wear the black uniforms, maybe you'll like it better.
Okay, I will look out for that. So be careful not to talk bad about LeBron James' son or how he should parent or what he should do. There are a lot of parents who don't want to be told what to do with their children, especially when it comes to vaccinations.
I mean, I think, though, in general, as a parent, you should accept experts and other people who tell you things that are possibly going to influence your child in some way.
So-called experts.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think that Nathan has talked about it before. Like, there's now like a culture, and this is going off on a little tangent, that, you know, people tend to kind of blame the teachers or blame other people, and they don't want to like blame their kids for things. But that's just like a general culture, right? It's like blaming others and not blaming the actual culprits.
Yeah, but also if you blame your children too much, you might gaslight them into believing that they broke a lamp.
There was no gaslighting.
I mean, we did tell her to accept our version of reality.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the gaslighting.
After she admitted that she broke it.
Yes, because she was like, they told me I did.
All I said was, just tell me the truth. If you broke it, it's okay. She's like, yes, I broke it.
So speaking of vaccines, now we've got our favorite person, RFK.
That guy.
And so one of the policies he's advocated for with regard to vaccines is what he calls informed consent, which would require healthcare providers to give certain information to people seeking vaccinations. Here's the problem. Informed consent's only informed if you're giving the proper information. So if you tell people things in such a way that they think, oh my God, the way that you phrased it, that sounds horrible, then they're going to be like, well, yeah, I don't want the vaccine. I've been informed with this pseudo information and it sounds horrible, so now I'm not going to want the vaccine. So is that informed consent? It's not informed consent if you're not giving the proper information.
Well, what information is coming out? Are they changing the information that's going out regarding these vaccines?
Well, I think with the measles outbreak, there was some uproar by doctors because the initial statement he put out, it didn't really seem to strongly advocate for vaccines. It started talking about vitamin A and other things, and it kind of weakly talked about vaccines, but didn't strongly support the vaccines. And the framing is so important. Like, I listened to a continuing education podcast recently while I was running. This was before the Austin Half. When I listened to it, I was like, I got to double check that because it sounded so ridiculous, the stat that they gave. So let me pull up this paper because...
What, the vitamin A thing?
No, I'm going to talk about framing and vaccines.
You're going to read the whole
informed
paper?
Consent. No. So...
It's our surprise
Okay.
podcast listeners. We're going to spend the next 40 minutes reading science.
So there was this article in JAMA, September of 2024.
And JAMA is a journal of the American Medical Association.
Yes. And I would say it's one of the top 2 journals,
Okay.
along with the New England Journal. So this is a pretty small study. So they had 111 recorded visits, 16 different pediatricians. And depending on how the pediatrician framed the vaccine, there was a huge difference in whether or not the parent chose to give the vaccines. So if the doctor said, Sarah is due for 3 shots today, 74% of the parents agreed to the vaccine. If the doctor said something like, what would you like to do about Sarah's shots today? 4% agreed. 4. I was like, what? So the framing and the way that you inform people is so important and makes a massive difference in terms of what people are going to do. So if RFK is going to inform people, but inform them in like a horrible way that makes it sound like, I mean, you're like a terrible parent if you give this vaccine, essentially, then it's not really informed.
So they're not actually telling them what information to give out.
Well, at this point, I'm not sure, but right now the guidance is already starting to be like the usual RFK thing. Like,
Wasn't
for
he also
example,
misapplying the vitamin A thing? Because I think I was reading that, yeah, it would have a benefit, but only if the person with the measles was specifically having a vitamin A deficiency. Otherwise, it was going to do nothing.
and most people aren't going to have a vitamin A deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Most people aren't going to have a vitamin deficiency in general if they just eat normally.
Yeah.
What
So,
about vitamin D?
even then, like usually your deficiency has to be pretty massive for you to really notice anything or have any ill effects. So more recent guidance has been that he's promoting clarithromycin, which is an antibiotic, and cod liver oil and vitamin A to treat measles.
Can you remind our listeners how measles goes, what the symptoms are, and how it can kill someone?
I'm not going to be able to say that on the pod because I have to study it.
Damn it.
Do you know why?
Why?
We don't really see it until now.
Well, I think I was reading something that said that they thought like in the year 2000, like that we were done with measles.
Exactly. And there was a video I was watching that a doctor was saying that she's like, I haven't seen measles. So like I would literally have to go back and review because I haven't even had to think about it or deal with it. Possibly my whole career so far, I don't think I've seen it. So now I've got to review because something that's viral, has a rash, and I have to think about, well, is this measles?
I'm trying to remember if it was in his book or not. I read somewhere recently that he was trying to say that like they found that the vaccines were like not even really the cause of why cases were going down, that they had found that some of the vaccines were like only 3% responsible for certain things going away. And I was like, that's interesting. Where did you get these numbers from?
Yeah, we still have to do our review of the book because there's a lot of work that's involved in that, reading the book, and there's a lot of fact checking to do. So I feel like that's going to take a long time. But framing and proper informed consent are huge. Like I was telling you, I've seen it in telemedicine because for the first time, I'm actually seeing what other doctors say to the patients since I was doing a lot of chat telemedicine, and I would see the transcripts of what they would say. And there are particular situations with mental health medications where they'd basically influence the patient into picking a certain medication because they would make the other medication sound so horrible. They're like, oh, the SSRIs are going to cause you sexual side effects and weight gain and all these things. Oh, but Wellbutrin won't do that. So what do you want to pick? It's like, I mean, most people are going to say, well, I don't want such horrible side effects. I would like the Wellbutrin. When in fact, that was improper framing, not really informed consent, because a lot of people don't have those side effects. Some people have side effects, but some people don't. And there are side effects with Wellbutrin, or possible side effects with Wellbutrin, but the doctor wouldn't present those. So, of course, the patient's like, am I a moron? Like, of course I'm going to pick Wellbutrin. So it's interesting because, I mean, we're already in a land of misinformation, and now we've got RFK at the top of it with medical misinformation, and it's just going to make things worse. I got to start reviewing my measles education, tetanus, all those things. I got to review things that I've never seen and only read about years ago. Got to think about diphtheria.
It's still very likely that a small, insulated religious community who is already hesitant to take vaccines, like that Mennonite community where that measles outbreak started, it's very possible that a group like that would still have a measles outbreak. But the protection of the people outside of that community once that outbreak breaks containment is the bigger problem.
Because of the concept of herd immunity. So you want most people to be immune so that the disease isn't spreading. And then apparently the second person who possibly died of measles was unvaccinated and was outside of that community. So, you know, he was unprotected, and maybe if there would have been herd immunity in that other community, maybe he wouldn't have had measles and he would be fine and he'd be here today.
What's the vaccine schedule for measles with the MMR?
That's something that you have to look up on a chart. I don't know that off the top of my head. I'm not a pediatrician.
Maybe we're going to get to a point where we'll need to actually vaccinate adults more so, who might later in life realize that they don't have that and are going to need to be vaccinated much later.
Well, people are already talking about that. So if you're not sure if you're immune, you should get a titer checked. And you may need to be vaccinated depending on that
what's
titer. A titer will basically check to see if you have the antibodies in your bloodstream, sufficient antibodies. So apparently our mom had titers done when she got married. So I don't know, I guess labs were required when she got married. Yeah, so she got a titer and she was non-immune. So she got vaccinated at that point again.
That's so weird. Why would you need titers for marriage?
I don't know. I think they used to do things like that. I feel like they may have also tested them for other diseases. I'm not sure. We'd have to call our mom and find out. But I told her because apparently there's a certain time period, like between a certain like decade or so. I think that people didn't get like a high dose vaccine. And so they're probably unprotected if they had the vaccine at that point. So I asked her about it, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine because I got my titer checked when I got married, and I got a vaccine at that point."
That's so weird.
Now we're gonna have to research that. Are you distressed that you didn't get labs when you got married?
Me? Oh, it was weird. Since we got married in Texas, even though we live in Illinois, we had to go get our marriage license over at the county office, and the administrator there just could not wrap her head around the fact that my wife did not have her father's last name. It's like,
I mean,
what's
that
your
is
mother's maiden name?
That is kind of weird.
Is it?
I mean, I've never heard of it. Have you?
It's possible.
Like in terms of a married couple. I've definitely heard of it like with unmarried couples where like they broke up right away or pretty quickly and they took the mother's name. But like for a married couple, it'd be strange.
Why would it be strange? What are the rules that say that it has to be the father's last name?
Okay. All right, let me be more accurate. It is different.
But she could not understand. She was like, all right, this is your last name. And what was your mother's maiden name? Oh, my last name. Are you sure? But it needs your mother's maiden name. It's the same thing. I don't know what to tell you.
She should have just made up a story at that point. Like, I actually don't know who my biological father is.
I'm pretty sure her father was on the certificate as well.
I don't know. Just make something up like, it was a one-night stand. That's why she named me after her.
That was a test tube baby. It was willed into existence. We ready to move on to the next topic?
You mean you wanted to talk about the State of the Union?
You wanted to talk about the State of the Union.
I love talking about all this. And I have a good attitude about it. Did y'all watch it? What?
I did not.
What?
I was not interested whatsoever.
I pay attention to things way too much. So I would say that I watched most of it. My kid was not very impressed with him.
Did she actually
with
watch it
Trump.
the whole time, or was she just on her phone?
She was partially watching it. So I will say that things that stood out to me were the Dems booing a lot at the beginning, which I did not like. I really didn't think that that was the way to win voters and to solve issues. I mean, he was just saying things like, I have a mandate at the beginning, and they just started booing really
Well, I don't know,
loud.
does that matter?
It's like,
I mean, Marjorie did that crap with Biden, and her constituents still support her.
just one person, though. This was a lot of boos. Like, it was loud. And then Al Green stood up with like a cane and was like yelling as well. So I don't know. I thought it was bad because there were a couple of really loud boos, and he was just trying to do his speech. Of course, it's going to be BS for the most part, but fine. Just like, don't make a scene. You can protest, but like not so loud where he was even having trouble talking because it was so loud. Of course, like a lot of lies in the speech. Also, here's the thing with this whole administration and the party. Like, who has the time to fact check all these things? Fact checking him was going to take many hours. Fact checking Rogan takes many hours. Fact checking the RFK book takes many hours. Like, that's the problem too. Like, there's just so much. Like, you can't even keep up with it. And so how do you convince people like this is BS when you don't even have time to fact check all of
And
it?
even if you do try to fact check it, there are plenty of people along their own media pipeline who fall in line and support it.
Yeah. Like, he started with the Social Security lie again. Like, oh, there's like all these 150-year-old people that are getting benefits, which is not true. Like, there have been multiple fact checks on that. I mean, some of the other stuff, I mean, it's the usual stuff that he says, like the golden age, all that. I mean, that, I guess, is still up for debate because he has not been in office that long, even though it feels like forever. So we don't know yet, I guess, technically, if it's going to be the golden age or not. He also said something like, the Dems are so bad that I could literally like find this cure for cancer or something, or for some disease, and they'd
What?
still be booing, or they'd still be negative towards me. And I think that that's stupid, but at the same time, it plays to his base, and it plays to like even some swing voters. Like, I mean, maybe they are going to be hateful towards everything he does. I don't know.
How would he even find the cure to cancer, though?
I don't know. I'm not sure if it was cancer or some other disease. He was just like, I could do the best thing ever, and they would still hate on me. The other thing that happened is there was like a 13-year-old kid there. Apparently, he has brain cancer. I'm not sure if he's in remission right now, but he might be. And so they pointed him out and talked about how they were going to make him like an honorary Secret Service member. And then his dad like lifted him up. Like, to me, it actually seemed like a really cool moment. And I feel like the Democrats should have just let him have his moment and should have just like cheered. And for the most part, they didn't. And then people were like, well, it's because it was all like a segue to saying that he was going to take away the chemicals or make all these changes that would prevent cancer, cure cancer. Like, that's fine. That's fine if that's the segue, okay? But the 13-year-old kid is a brain cancer survivor, and he deserves his moment. Like, sometimes just cheer. Just be happy for the kid, even though it's a political thing. Like, he's not playing politics. It's his life. So I don't know. It was like a 99-minute speech, apparently, which some people were saying was like the longest speech ever, which I don't know why Trump always has the longest
he
speeches.
just rambles.
It's the longest speech. He passed Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
He just says whatever.
So basically, it's just like a stump speech. And of course, like, I think if you have common sense, of course, you would want him to not ruin the country and make things better. But the issue is, so far, he's still not proven that he's going to improve anything. And I'm not sure that he's going to improve anything because his strategies are just bizarre and stupid.
Well,
and
people are being gaslit into thinking that that things will get better. I just don't know in what scale of years the damage will be done for some of these things. I think some of it's more immediate, like some of the firings, some of the other action to say dismantle the Department of Education coming down the pipeline. But I think there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people won't feel for a couple of years. But will there be improvement? Who knows?
I feel like it's unlikely that things are going to get a lot cheaper. I feel that it's unlikely that our economy is going to be much better, especially with like bizarre tariff policies where like every month you're threatening a tariff and then a few days later you're like, okay, I'll delay it.
It's like tank the market just to make a threat.
Speaking of gaslighting, I saw someone post on Facebook in a comment that, oh, he knows what he's doing. He's manipulating the markets.
Yeah, I think I saw that. That way the rich people buy when it's low and then it goes right back up. Makes a quick profit.
That sucks. It all sucks.
At the end of the day, though, I think he really wants the tariffs because he thinks that they're going to produce income for us. So I feel like he's getting pressured, he's getting flattered in order to delay the tariffs, but ultimately he wants the tariffs to stick.
So many countries and world leaders are just tired of the BS. They're not going to keep on just waiting for the U.S. They're going to make their own decisions because they know they can't rely on them anymore. And it's not just governments. Did you see about that Mexican billionaire who divested a bunch of money that was earmarked for Starlink stuff because Elon shared a tweet that implied that this billionaire was involved with the cartels? And the billionaire was
Carlos
like,
Slim.
dummy, I was going to pay you like $7 billion for Starlink stuff, but instead I'm going to invest locally in Latin America and also with China for telecoms in Mexico. Idiot.
Yeah.
You just lost $7 billion.
And he's losing more.
But that's the same thing that's going to happen with our allies and with our neighbors, with these countries.
Well, what I would do if I were the other countries is I would keep on seeing how far he'll delay the tariffs. And in the meantime, just be planning to do trade with everyone else.
I don't think he's going to delay the tariffs too much longer because he knows that he has to generate revenue for the government with those big tax cuts he gave. So eventually they're just going to stick and we're just going to have to pay for it.
There's been no movement on trying to check in on this avian flu and figure out what's going on with eggs.
What are you talking about? There's movement today that the DOJ is going to investigate the prices of the eggs.
And then what?
What does this investigation entail? You're just going to go ask him, like, why are you selling these eggs for so much?
That sounds like the El Salvador president who started threatening the businesses that if they don't drop their prices, they'll do something to them. Like probably jail.
Are you talking about Parks and Rec?
No.
You overcook fish, jail. Undercooked fish, also jail.
I mean, I do think it's funny and hypocritical that when Kamala talked about some type of price controls, even though she didn't fully say price controls, I don't remember what she said exactly, but any like suggestion of price control was like, oh my God, communist, but totally okay for Republicans to use a DOJ to investigate egg prices.
Yes, when you're part of a cult, anything that your side does is perfectly acceptable.
Why has it got to be a side, dude? We should just get rid of the two-party system.
I mean, I think we need to get back to a more informed populace. Like, we used to have candidates, even though at the time people were like, oh my God, they're horrible.
Howard Dean?
But we had people like,
Yeah!
well, yeah. Well, and George W. Bush and Mitt Romney and John McCain that were a lot more educated, a lot better people that you could actually have like a real conversation about.
It's the algorithms. We've talked about it time and time again. Social media has completely changed our brain. I don't know if I've had this conversation specifically about the algorithms on the pod before, but I was talking to someone about how like the algorithms are making us think like computers. Like we are capable of abstract thought. We as humans are capable of thinking about a spectrum of possibilities. We can know about things like moral gray areas and how things are complex. Computers operate in ones and zeros. They operate in binaries. It's on, it's off, it's right, it's wrong, it's black, it's white. And because of the way that all of this media filters through the computers, it makes us think about it in the same way too. So there has to be this right, this wrong. There has to be these sides, this good versus evil thing for everyone, because we're becoming machines. We're being reprogrammed. Big tech is the true psyop.
Well, that also goes to the overconsumption of social media and stuff. And that's why I never watch any of this stuff. Even if people send me videos, I'm like, nope, didn't watch it. They're like, why? I'm like, because I don't really like watching videos. I think it's boring. But if you look at most people, they're consuming video after video. And like Justin saying, those algorithms already know what you like, so they keep showing it to you. I think if you consume enough media, I personally don't think I could ever get to that point where like I would just consume so much media that my views would change. Just hearing it, I'm like, this sounds like bullshit. So I'm not even going to look into it. But if I think something sounds interesting, I mean, I'm going to research it further. I'm not just like, oh, you know what? I'm going to completely change my view. From what I've read, people have had friends that went to MAGA where it was just like one day to the next. Like they went down this rabbit hole, whether it was QAnon or something that happened, like to something with an immigrant, and they just keep reading. And they find all this stuff that reaffirms what they're thinking. That's it. The next day they were no longer the same person.
I mean, that's a problem. Like, we should never want things to just affirm our thinking. We should have a hypothesis, and we should do the research to see if we're wrong or we're right. And sometimes you're going to be wrong. If you feel like you're never finding things that prove that you're wrong, then there's probably something wrong with you. I mean, there's like no self-awareness if you think whatever you're finding is always affirming what you thought.
Yeah, but that's the problem with the way the internet's evolved. I mean, you can find something that justifies your viewpoint, no matter how wrong it is. Somebody out there is thinking like you and wrote something that sounds at least halfway intelligent, and you're just like, yeah, you know what? I'm right. This article says that I am, and I'm not going to be convinced otherwise.
Well, then I'd want to investigate who that person was, what their background is, because like everything I think can't be right.
Speaking of consuming media like this, I saw a YouTube video from this guy whose YouTube channel is called Technology Connections, where he just talks about like, oh, this is a cool thing that this vintage technology did, and this is how it works, and isn't this interesting? This is how your dishwasher works. But he's based in Chicago. He did this video talking about how we no longer control our consumption and usage of the internet. When the internet started, you had to find everything. You had to bookmark things. You had to put in a web address and find the sites that you wanted to go to. And when you discovered something, it was kind of special. You knew that you wanted to go to that blog. You knew you wanted to go to that recipe channel, like whatever content you were looking for, but you looked for it. You were involved in that process. Even if you did a Google search, you were looking for things. But now you go on a platform and everything is dictated by this like For You feed, this Discover feed, this algorithmic feed where you don't even have to think about what to look for. You just sit down and you consume.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I still consume the internet the way you described it. And that's the way I'm always going to consume it. I want to find it. I want to know that I found what I was looking for. I don't give a shit what you show me. I'm like, I don't want to see this. I'm looking for this.
How can we do a digital detox? I feel like people think the digital detox is getting a dumb phone, not being on the apps, but how do you do like a conscientious digital detox? How do you do an algorithmic detox? How do you take back control of your internet usage?
I think this would work, and this is still the way how I use my phone to this day. I don't really use all the apps. And people are always like, why do you go through the browser? And I'm like, because if I want to look at something on Facebook, I'm going to type it in, I'm going to go there. I don't want it to give me notifications. When I log in, I'll see it. So like if I want to look at anything, I don't use the ESPN app. Like apps I use are like just things like, let's say for my Tesla, like to turn on the car. Yeah, I got to use the app. But like for Facebook, I can check the browser. ESPN, I can check the browser. So like I said, for me, I never get caught in those traps because I don't consume it through any app. There's no feed ready for me. I'm only going to those sites when I choose to go to them.
Yeah, and even if data is still being collected on you, wherever you go on the internet, if you go to websites and all that, there's way more data getting collected from you on an app.
Wait, how are you able to just get most of your information through apps? Like I always use a web browser as well.
Well, that might be the problem. Okay, maybe that's why we don't get tricked. I'm still going to use this web browser.
Like if you're in the Facebook app or like the Twitter app, I'm sorry, the X app.
I like to read articles, and then I like to maybe visit some of the links that are embedded, that are like the source. And then sometimes I like to research things that are within the article too. So I might Google that as well.
Well, Google News is also basically an algorithmic feed as well, or Apple News or whatever like news platform app that is default on your device. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm Googling things like what percentage of nursing home care is funded by Medicaid? You know? Like I'm doing fact checks like that. Speaking of our new internet age and our app age, what did you think about that Gavin Newsom, Charlie Kirk
I didn't listen
podcast
to it.
interview. Kirk basically was very condescending towards Democrats. And one thing he said was, you guys have not built the intellectual muscle over 30 years because y'all agree with each other all the time. And he also stated that Democrats can't do podcasts in long form. Like, what? These are like crazy
It's also
generalizations.
It's like, no, you.
Yeah.
That's the same thing they said about Kamala, that she couldn't, there's no way she could have done that 3-hour interview.
Okay, again, this is like bizarre because it's like the Trump thing. Like, oh my God, he talks so much. Okay, but does it matter if you're just saying complete bullshit and complete lies and just being stupid all the
We
time?
could talk here for 3 hours just
He's
about
keeping it-
garbage.
He's keeping it real.
I mean, if we talked for 3 hours, it'd still be better than 3 hours of Trump. 100
I'd
times
probably just be
better
all pissed
because
off.
it would not be stupid. It would be factual. If we don't know things, then we'll say we don't know things and we need to look them up.
So at no point would you say this is quite possibly the greatest podcast of all time being recorded at this exact moment.
I mean, if we ever became number one in podcasts throughout the country, then maybe I'd say it then.
I don't know. This idea of saying that all the Democrats agree with each other, that's not true. There's like a huge further left contingent of progressives who do not like the way that old school Democrats are doing things. There's a lot of disagreement there. In fact, a lot of the
Yeah.
disagreement is why there was so much fracturing within the party to begin with. They can't even figure
Yeah.
out what to do about tensions in the Middle East because
Yeah.
there's a very clear divide between folks on the Democratic side who want Palestine to be a free entity that is not being destroyed by Israel and wants Israel to be held accountable. And you have a lot of old school Democrats who are just like, well, Israel's our buddy. And if you don't like that, you're anti-Semitic. Like, what do you mean Democrats always agree with each other?
I can't believe he even said that though, because I mean, come on, Charlie Kirk, your party has got to the point where Elon's even threatening, like, if you don't agree with Donald Trump, I'm going to back somebody else to get you out. So obviously you guys agree with everything because otherwise you're
Well,
out.
that's also rich considering that, remember, they all fell in line with the Zelensky meeting. Like,
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, they have to agree with whatever Trump says, but Democrats disagree with
But-
everything. You can't even disagree with Donald Trump, or else you're on
Yeah.
the outs immediately.
it's also bizarre to say, oh, we're the intellectuals and you're not. Like, it's bizarre. It's like very much abusive and gaslighting all the time with these people.
Yeah, well, think I read that article you said he ended up like choosing to not even go to college after all, and turns out it came out better
Who,
for him
Charlie Kirk?
anyway. Yeah, he has influence on the president now.
Well, for some reason, there are a lot of people who are not formally educated who are big in the Republican Party. I don't know why that could be.
They tell it like it is. I mean, you don't need to go to college to be smart. There are a lot of people who don't have the
It's
opportunity,
true.
who have the brains, who have the street smarts, but also just saying that people who have educated themselves are stupid, blanket. In general, back to the idea of thinking like computers, any of these absolutist statements are garbage. They have
Yeah.
no human rhetorical value because that's not how we used to think.
But I will say that if you didn't get a significant formal education after high school, then maybe you don't have the tools to research properly. And maybe that's why some of these people fall into this.
And it's more like your worldview is a little bit more limited as well.
Well, that's true. They keep on saying that don't go to college because you'll get indoctrinated, which really means you'll get an expanded worldview and you'll start thinking differently.
Yep, you'll learn to use chopsticks.
I have not learned that
Imbecile.
despite quite a bit of education.
You need to learn.
No, I was more
Terrible.
interested in that product that creates like kind of
the
a
chopstick gun.
pincer mechanism. Yeah.
They in the Instagram reel video, they called it the American style grip. It looks like a gun that puts the chopsticks together.
Yeah, that podcast was weird though with Charlie Kirk. Like Newsom didn't even really fight back that much. It was bizarre. I honestly don't think he should be talking to people like that. Like I don't feel like Charlie Kirk is a good person and somebody that we should take seriously. So the big takeaways, it was him claiming that he has a very appealing product with what he presents, that it's not just about politics, it's also about culture. And this whole like little condescending thing of, oh, we're the intellectuals and oh, you guys can't do podcasts.
Well, we're doing it. We're doing podcasts.
That's so weird.
You consider yourself Democrats?
Nathan said he was independent.
Independent since '83.
I am definitely a Democrat.
I'm registered as a Democrat, but it's more as a formality, just because it's really hard to get independent candidates at the federal level going. And if you're not registered as a Democrat, you have no say in the primary process, which sucks. So you just kind of have to
Yeah.
choose whatever you get at the end. That's the only reason I'm registered as a Democrat.
Yeah. I mean, I want to say that I'm proud of being a Democrat. I think there's a lot to be proud of with Democratic Party. I think that for the most part, we've been the saner party, which, you know, some people get angry about, like, oh, you're not fighting hard enough. It's like, well, I don't know what you want us to do. I mean, we play by the rules. We try to get legislation through. We don't just try to like take over the entire government and the judiciary and everything. Also, I think Democrats fight for civil rights. They fight for people having health care, for people having better lives, better wages. So I think there's a lot to be proud of.
Are there still conservatives in your life who are like, why are you trying to be so divisive? Or has that whole line of reasoning gone out the window since the election?
I don't feel like there's been a lot of fighting recently because I think the Republicans are just happy they won and they're still basking in the glory of the win. Trump's going to save everything. He's going to make it better. And they're saying that it's going to take time because Biden left such a mess. That's going to take time for Trump to fix it. But Democrats need to like figure out a message so that they don't appear to be toxic. Because I think at the end of the day, Democrats, what they really believe, it's not toxic. It's not a toxic party. But they've lost the narrative where supposedly they're crazy, they're radical leftists, they're Marxists, and they're communists, and all they care about is transgender people.
And they're cringe, as per Fox News.
Yeah, cringe, stupid. They can't just speak. They have to look at notes. They can't do podcasts. So do you think Trump should have gotten his position, given the fact that he clearly is stupid?
I don't actually care about his intellect. I think he shouldn't have gotten his position because he's a horrible person. He's corrupt.
Well, there's all of that, but he's also so stupid. Like, he doesn't understand anything. He doesn't understand economics. He doesn't understand foreign policy. Like, it's just so stupid. And he's getting, like, essentially influenced by another stupid person, Elon, and he still can't figure out what to do about that. He recently, though, I think today, told Elon that he can no longer fire people directly.
Took long enough.
And it's only really because, like, the cabinet and the Congress people were pressuring him, pressuring Trump. It's going to be a mess because this guy is stupid and clearly not a good student. Never was, won't ever be. I think that being a good student does have some relevance, like, because it helps you in terms of like evaluating information and evaluating new information and trying to make decisions.
I think what Democrats need to do is they need to listen to the American people. I know a bunch of liberal folks who came from this wealthier, educated bubble who, in theory, are for like, equality and togetherness and other people's rights, but they don't know anything about what it's like to be poor in this country or to be a person of color in this country. So they don't have that trust, and a lot of times they're just out of touch. And these people who've been career politicians, they've just been there forever. They have no idea what it's like anymore to live like the people that they represent. Not at all. We need new blood. We need people who have the self-awareness to realize when they do or don't understand what their constituents are going through. And if they don't, to actually listen to them. People were hurting with food prices and prices of groceries and gas prices and prices of goods. And no, all they did was say, well, the numbers, the stock market's great. The economy looks good.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can't fix the food prices.
Well, speaking of new blood, isn't one of the pod members here trying to run for office?
I mean, I've been wanting to run for office, but right now I'm exploring a congressional House seat run. I've got to raise money, though, so that's a limiting factor.
Well, here's the time to put your message out, possibly get some donors.
I mean, I think my message is that I've been a Republican before. I voted for George W. Bush. I voted for Mitt Romney. And at some point, I felt like I wanted to switch to the Democratic Party. And I'm the type of person that evaluates the information, listens to people, and I can compromise with people, too. So I do agree with a lot of like the broad strokes of what the Democrats believe in, but I think there may be different ways that things need to be done. So, I mean, healthcare is obviously a big thing, but I don't necessarily think that we're ready for Medicare for all. Like I said before, we need a healthier population. I don't think we can really afford it. So you have to think about creative solutions for a healthier population and maybe some type of hybrid system where healthcare is more affordable for more people and we can control costs. And then there are a lot of other things like let's get to the table and make some real compromises on gun control. I mean, I'm anti-gun, but at the same time, I understand that a lot of people in Texas really feel strongly that they want to keep guns, right? So we got to work with people and say, hey, you know, some of these things, you know, putting kids in danger potentially or putting people in danger. So maybe we have to think about some restrictions as far as maybe ages where people can buy guns. Maybe, you know, we have to think about, you know, if someone's had like a psychotic episode recently, something like that, maybe they shouldn't have a gun, things like that. But there are things that we have to compromise on essentially. So things like that, like I am very open to listening to ideas and compromising. You know, I don't want people to be discriminated against. I don't want transgender people to be discriminated against. I want them to have the ability to have a nice and happy life. But we got to have the compromises and talk about these things and not just have like a binary choice of like, oh, we're going to be for transgender people or against. No, like it's not black and white like that. Like we got to think about what we can do to, yeah, we got to think about what we can do as far as non-discrimination, protecting their rights. But at the same time, like, you know, if you want to have a discussion about safety of transgender people in sports, we can have the discussion and have real conversations, look at the research, and maybe even leave it to the particular community as far as what you want to do at the sport level.
And this is for Texas 15th congressional district, correct?
That would be where we're looking at, right?
Do you have like any nicknames for Monica de la Cruz that are catchy?
Why would I do that? I'm trying to find solutions and make things better. I'm not really
whatever.
a mudslinger.
We should go make our own political party with blackjack and hookers.
I mean, if she was LeBron James, like it would be way easier for me
That's
to
the
be
key.
pissed
Just
off.
imagine she's LeBron James. That's all you have to do.
She is LeBron James. She's the first Republican and woman to represent that district.
Nice. I mean, that is a weird district, though. It was like gerrymandered. So it's a bizarre district that was recently redistricted, right? It's a bizarre district because it cuts through the Rio Grande Valley in like a weird way. And I think it like kind of bypasses a lot of McAllen. And then it includes Edinburgh. And then it goes up in like a sliver through like Alton and through Seguin and like to the east side of San Antonio.
Yeah, it's part of McAllen. Also got Mission.
Oh, does it? Okay. But isn't
Yes.
is part of McAllen out of it?
Yes, part of McAllen is the 34th
Yeah,
district.
isn't that
It's in the
bizarre?
middle of a not that big city.
Yeah, so the redrawing of districts is interesting. I don't know if you heard that this Texas congressman had just got voted in and then he died.
No.
Did you hear that? Then I looked at his district and it was like a bizarre district where it's like a donut. It's like a donut district. Like, what is this district?
Sounds
I feel like
delicious.
the shape of the TX-15 is more like a fajita or something.
We have to think about it in terms
Yeah,
of food
I mean,
always, yes.
Texas has the panhandle, right?
That's true.
Well, we'll see what happens with that.
But I think that Democrats have to think about the right way to go forward. I don't think it's booing and trying to be disruptive at the State of the Union. I think it's saying, hey, like, yeah, they're doing bad things, but I also have solutions for you. I can compromise. Let's come up with creative solutions, creative ideas, so that at the end of the day, most of our lives or everyone's lives are improved. Affordable health care, not struggling as much as far as day-to-day living, higher wages. I don't know that you can necessarily say, oh, yeah, let's just go to $15 an hour minimum wage.
Why not?
I think you may have to. I think like every area is different. So I don't know if you have to think about a more creative solution rather than saying everyone to 15. In some areas, 15 is a lot to all of a sudden
Well,
jump
it's never
to,
all of a
as
sudden.
far
All
as
of
the
these
business
wage
owners.
increases, even when it is 15, are graduated over the course of many years.
Well, yeah, if it's graduated,
But
that would make more sense.
That's not how most people do it. Most people don't pop it in immediately.
Well, I think then you have to be better at explaining. Don't just say
Well, definitely.
$15 an hour. Say that we're going to have a graduated process over, I don't know, 10 years or whatever the time frame is. And it's going to be $9 right away. And then another 2-3 years, then we go to 11. But I haven't heard people explain that. I literally have just seen people say $15 an hour. There's no explanation. So maybe that's why people freak out too.
Well, Texas definitely needs to move to at least 10, immediately.
Yeah, and I understand that business owners are going to be concerned about it, but we also have to think about the fact that if you put more money into people's pockets, then they can afford more and put more into the economy, and then they're less likely to need assistance, less likely to need welfare and food stamps. So at the end of the day, it's probably a positive for everyone. I mean, of course, there's going to be some inflationary effect, but if you do it gradually, then I think that'll be less.
But people need to stop worrying about this inflationary effect, though, because just pay attention. No matter what happens, the prices are going to continue to go up. So you can keep people's wages down, and you're still going to see the prices are going to continue to rise regardless of any sudden wage increases. So keep in mind that just because you're paying a living wage doesn't mean that your business is not going to prosper anymore.
Well, it's more likely that you are going to prosper if more people have money to afford your products.
Maybe we just got to suffer
services.
for a little bit once that wage increases. Unless it's just suffering forever, because that's the main argument, right? That it's going to be very hard for us to change now. When we should have changed a long time ago.
Well, and I think maybe what we need to do is explain to people better and give a better narrative that eventually what happens is you're going to have a happier, more productive, more healthy population. And that's going to have amazing effects down the road as far as the economy, as far as people that are working more years, as far as people who are healthier, using less healthcare services like Medicare, Medicaid. So, I mean, it all snowballs into a positive thing, but we're not really explaining it that way, right? We're just oh, $15 an hour. And then people are oh my God, we can't afford that. And there's going to be inflation. It's okay, but we got to explain that there's going to be a graduated process, that now these people are going to be able to buy homes. They're going to be able to afford more things, pump money into the economy, and then have less need for entitlements, and then be healthier. There's so many things, if you look further down the road, that paying a living wage would help with.
I also think that people just get jealous and they think let's say they're not making $15 right now. And if the wage jumps straight to 15, all of a sudden somebody that they view as lesser, let's say an employee at a fast food restaurant, oh, why are they making 15? And I'm also making 15. I work a lot harder. You shouldn't be seeing it that way. If you have a good employer, they're going to pay you more than the minimum wage when that happens.
What are these people doing though that they feel like they work harder than a fast food worker?
I don't know. It's just this entitlement thing where they just feel oh, well, if that happens, I just go work at McDonald's. I'm just well, I mean, if that's what you'd want to do, you're more than welcome to do that.
Well,
but I mean, this idea that you're going to be making the same as them, I don't think that's really what's going to happen.
Well, also, they're assuming something that's wrong. People who work at McDonald's are working their butts off. They're just constantly moving. Someone told me about their kid who worked 9 hours straight at McDonald's, and afterwards she was crying because it was horrible. She normally doesn't work 9 hours straight. And when she had to do it, she was like that was the worst. It was so hard on my body.
Yeah, I've heard that when they get really busy, even if you had a break that was promised to you and it's required, no, you just have to keep working.
I mean, but these are things that we can't necessarily fix as far as people's thought processes, right? I guess there'll always be that, right? It's human to sometimes feel some resentment or some jealousy. So I don't know. We can't really fix that. I don't know what to say about that because I think it's natural to have resentments and assumptions and jealousies sometimes.
The other
we could explain it better.
Problem is, yeah, like I say, because other people are oh, well, they need to struggle like I did. I'm where's this idea that anybody needs to struggle? Why can't you just have a living wage, and maybe that's all you're going to be. Maybe that person's only going to make $15 an hour for the rest of their lives. Like, you want them to go through what you did to get to where you got, but maybe that person doesn't have the ambition, maybe doesn't even have the intelligence. Maybe that's just their ceiling, but at least they can live on that.
Well, maybe that's the isolation effect too, and how we're no longer as connected to other people, and so we don't have as much empathy for other people. Because I guess my question would be to that person, do you feel the same way about your kids? Because a lot of us are doing better than we were as kids, right? So we're offering our kids a lot more. So do they feel like their kids need to struggle and go through the same crap that they did?
Some of these people do have that
About
mentality.
their own kids?
Like, oh my, some people do have this mentality. I've heard like, well, they're going to have to struggle. Have to figure it out.
I don't agree with that. Like, I feel immense love for my child to the point that I do not want her to struggle. I would like her to have everything, and I would like her to have the best life that she can have and everything better than I had. So I don't know.
It's a tough conversation. Tough to change people's mind these days.
Just talk to a person. Don't talk to a computer. Don't be a computer. Don't be a computer.
Yeah.
Don't think like a computer.
Yeah.
I think that wraps it up for us today. We've been talking for a very long time. We do have some stuff in the mailbag that we do want to consider and respond to. So we hope that we can do that in the near future. Follow us on all the socials. Tell everyone about this podcast and the things you've learned. Or challenge us. Have like a human discussion with us. That's cool too. We're all about free speech and connecting with other people. All the podcast platforms, rated 5 stars. Follow us. Like, not physically, like online. Do not stalk us. Please do not.
And Vladimir, keep listening. Rate us 5 stars. Make it mandatory for all the government to hear us.
And we'll see you later.
All right. Until next time.
Justice.